SUPERFANATICS, Hollywood, friends, fun discussion, video show. SUPERFANATICS, 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 Hollywood, friends, fun discussion, video show.
Hello, welcome to another episode of SUPERDIVORCE SUPERFANATICS.
SUPERFANATICS.
Today, I'm Bender.
I'm Nicholas here.
And today we're going to be talking about the most current run of Moon Knight.
Run number 6. It's volume 6 going on right now.
Is it?
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Started back in March.
Yeah. Moon Knight is a character that you actually got me into.
Well, I'm glad that you. I'm glad you took the chance to check it out.
Yeah.
Because it's a real treat. The Moon Knight character.
Yeah, Moon Knight is pretty rad. So like this current run, this volume 6, is being written by Jeff Lemire.
Yeah, one of my favorite comic writers going right now. I first read Jeff's work with what was it? Green Arrow. A run that he did on Green Arrow, and everything he does is awesome. So even if you don't go for Moon Knight, if it's a little too Batman-ish, which some people levy the complaint against Moon Knight for being, I don't buy it.
No.
He's much different. Anyway, anything Jeff Lemire does, good stuff.
Yeah. So I guess before we get into kind of this current story, just like a very brief history of Moon Knight. The character debuted in Werewolf by Night number 32 back in 1975, and I kind of sort of disagree with the Batman comparison, or I kind of agree with it, but I see he's a very different character because much like Batman, he's a vigilante. He has his own plane and gadgets and things like that, but one of the things that makes Moon Knight so unique is that he struggles with a lot of mental illness.
Yeah.
Particularly split personality disorder, I believe schizophrenia.
Which it wasn't always the case. When he first started out, it was just like he had these different personas that he would adopt to kind of play the chameleon, and be who he needed to be to, make this or that happen.
Another important thing about Moon Knight is that he's Marc Spector, and Marc Spector gets the Moon Knight persona when he is killed in Egypt and revived by an ancient Egyptian god, Khonshu, who sort of is his guardian, not necessarily always his protector.
No, not always. Kind of a mischievous god.
Yeah, and Moon Knight is sort of his really his lapdog, his servant, and Khonshu kind of requests things of Mark, and those are sort of the basis of a lot of the Moon Knight stories. But this one in particular kind of
it calls all of that into question.
In a fantastic way. I love it.
You start off issue 1 of this new volume 6 run here from 2016 with Khonshu and Marc Spector having a conversation with one another in this sort of I don't know, it seems like a
dreamscape.
A dreamscape. It's like a pyramid in outer space almost is what it seems like.
Yeah.
And Mark is asking him who he is. He's trying to figure it out, and Khonshu tells him to figure out who you are, you have to remember who you were. And then we see Marc Spector put the Moon Knight mask on, and when he does that, he gets a sort of flash of images in his head of all of the different people that he's been, from Marc Spector, Moon Knight, Jake Lockley, the taxi driver, Stephen Grant, the kind of Bruce Wayne-ish a little bit.
Yeah, Stephen Grant's kind of a Hollywood playboy.
Yeah.
And I believe a producer in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, after this sort of you have to, he wants Mark to remember who he's been, then suddenly we're in a mental institution.
Yeah, he awakens out of this kind of dream sequence right there in the thick of a scuffle with some workers at the mental facility.
Yeah, and what makes this run so awesome and why I wanted to talk about it today is because they do such a great job of calling into question these like almost 50 years of Moon Knight comics, saying that he's basically been in a mental institution the whole time.
Yeah.
And they're trying to, cure him of his multiple personalities and his violent outbursts and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So the first first three issues of the series really kind of deal with him trying to figure out what exactly is going on.
Yeah.
I really like that he perceives... Well, I really like when he first makes it to the roof of the hospital.
And he looks out at New York City.
Yeah, and Khonshu has been telling him, you have to get out, you have to see New York. And he gets up to the roof and he looks out, and New York is a desert. And there's pyramids and flying Egyptian jackals. And the arc is called New Egypt.
Right.
And so Khonshu is basically trying to tell Mark the gods are taking over. The old Egyptian gods are going to come and take over New York, and you have to stop them, which prompts him to attempt his escape.
And when you hear that, that sounds pretty insane.
Yeah.
But you have to remember you're within the world of Marvel Comics, so could be.
Yeah, and
you know?
you don't know. You don't know what Mark sees, because one minute he's seeing the orderlies with jackal heads, and then the next minute they're regular people. So eventually he enlists the help of a couple of the other patients.
People who look very familiar to him.
Yeah, people who he recognizes possibly from a past life. And they mount their escape.
And along the way, as they're trying to, gain access to freedom, we do see some of the characters not quite make it out. And which ones those are, read and find out. Especially if you're a fan of the series, who maybe you kind of fell off for a while and you're getting back into it. It's a great place to start, a great place to jump back in, and there's some shocking stuff that will happen just within the first 5 issues in this first arc.
Yeah.
So,
personally, like I said, I became a Moon Knight fan when you mentioned him. It's probably like 2 or 3 years ago. So I'm not particularly versed in like all things Moon Knight. I started reading probably most consistently with the previous run, that started with Warren Ellis and
right.
then moved to Brian Wood,
where he's doing kind of the Mr. Knight thing.
Yeah. That was kind of the first consistent run of Moon Knight that I got, and I really liked it a lot. But I feel like this run, for as crazy as it is and as much as it calls into question, it's very coherent, and I really enjoy the juxtaposition between like what Mark sees, when he's seeing the Egyptian gods and he's seeing the jackals and he's seeing the mummies in the subway, which was so awesome.
Yeah.
Versus what people are telling him he's seeing.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool. They handle his mental illness really well.
Right. Yeah, they make it. They really highlight the fact that he clearly has some issues that he's working through. I mean, he's admitted as much in the comics himself, but there's truth to some of it, and that's the trick, is him trying to figure out what is fact and what's fiction, what is really going on, what he's making up in his own head, and that's also the job of the reader. Mm-hmm. You kind of have to decide for yourself, as you were saying in these scenes, what's real and what's not, and
because you're given a lot of evidence both ways, which is really cool.
Yeah, and again, I'm inclined a lot of times to lean towards, it's really going on because you're reading a comic book,
right,
and you want to indulge yourself in that fantasy, but you leave it open a little bit. You understand that because he does suffer from mental illness, some of it might not be real.
Yeah, and although I do find myself, despite the character and how much Mark struggles, I find myself rooting for Mark a lot of the time. Yeah. I want the things happening to him to be real, and I don't want them to be delusions, because I just want him to be right. Mm-hmm. I want all of the doubt and everything surrounding everything to be justified.
Yeah.
But particularly, I think a really good example of all of this is particularly issue 5 of this run, and it's the last issue of the arc. So we end New Egypt with issue 5, but he's climbing the pyramid and fighting himself. He's fighting another Moon Knight, but as the Moon Knight leaves and he begins to chase him, he's going through doors in the pyramid, and every time he goes through a door, not only does the art style of the comic change, which is really cool, but he is a different persona from his past, and it kind of is there's a brief story there.
And the art style, when they jump from door to door, and really encapsulates whatever character he is inhabiting at that moment.
Yeah.
It's really neat. I specifically enjoyed the one where he's Jake Lockley. It has this really cool 70s dirty vibe to it. It feels like it feels like opening a comic from the 70s if they would have had a little bit better technology to render the images at that point.
Right. I particularly enjoy the segment they're calling Night of the Moon, where suddenly Marc Spector is an astronaut on the moon. I love the art style of it. Luckily, minor spoiler, luckily Night of the Moon returns in issue 6. So this sort of disjointed reality is continued, at least for now. We're only up to 7 issues in this volume. But I'm excited to see where Night of the Moon goes. It's really cool. And
even aside from the guest artists that have worked on this book, the art running throughout the series, issues 1 through 5 anyway, it's been amazing. That was really the first thing I noticed as soon as I flipped the first page open.
Yeah.
When this new arc started, was how incredible the art is.
Lots of excellent work with negative space.
Oh yeah.
I love how Moon Knight is like almost always pure white. It's just really, really, really well done. I think the comic as a whole is awesome, and definitely one of, if not the best run of Moon Knight that I have read personally so far.
Yeah, it's going to be cool to see where it goes.
Yeah, and I hope it continues, because Moon Knight is a character that always gets cut off. I believe the highest run of Moon Knight is only 60 issues, and that was Marc Spector's Moon Knight.
Well, between certain runs not selling well, and then also Marvel's propensity to just start over and hit the reset button every year to 2 years, it's good luck trying to get past issue 15.
Luckily, though, those resets have almost never affected Moon Knight.
I think the last one did. The last one did cause this volume
to happen. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, for the most part, though, they're not erasing anything from his past, at least. Some characters get weird stuff erased.
Yeah.
Right? So check out Moon Knight. Check out specifically Volume 6. The Jeff Lemire is writing.
Yep.
And
also check out some of Lemire's other work.
Yeah.
So.
And tune in next week. And no promises, but I think we're going to talk about Old Man Logan next week.
We're going to try to.
We're going to try.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.